Our power is in our voice. Our power, it's in our thoughts. Our power is in our actions. Our power, it's already innate in who we are. We are the earth. We are the sky. We are the trees. We are our ancestors. We are the future generations. We are all that is.
All right, welcome to day 3 of the People's Reset 2026. Make some noise, my friends, if you're with us this morning. Yeah. Thank you, everybody at home, for tuning in. Who was here for the concert last night? Who survived and thrived through that? Wow, wasn't that just a life-changing experience? Felt like for me. We're gonna talk about the concert in just a moment. We're gonna get some talks, but I want to first, let's go back to the other shot and show the folks at home this art here. Have you guys, this is my lovely partner Miriam's hand-drawn, hand wood-burn mandalas that she does. If you've never seen this, was all done by hand. She added these gold flakes in there. By the way, this is for sale if anybody wants this, so please let her know. She's back there. Make some noise for Miriam right there in the back of the room. Yeah. So this is going to bless the stage while we have the talks going on today, so please enjoy it. And yeah. And so on the concert, again, last night was just amazing. I know...
melody I said, let the rhythm come straight from your hips and let the fire come straight from your
our thing, and then over the last year have reconnected. And so it's just a huge honor to bring her and bring Ben and all the artists and of course all the speakers, but the artists specifically, because have you ever got, we're out here creating the freedom movement as activists or just free people, but you ever notice sometimes it's hard to find music that you feel fits the vibe of what the life you're living? And a lot of people don't realize that there are conscious artists out there. There are conscious rappers. There are, conscious artists of all kinds. You ever had that struggle? Like you're looking for music and all you're finding is garbage? Well, if some of us know where to look, but if you ever have trouble, check out all the artists. All their information is on the website. If you go to the Greater Reset or thepeoplesreset.org/speakers, and everybody at home as well, you can see all their profiles. Check out their music. Follow them all the places, show them love, buy their stuff on Bandcamp, buy their music here. We need the artists, as everybody has ever, said in the past, like there's no real revolution, or let's say for us, an evolution without music, right? We got to be able to dance while we're building that better world. So let's give a round of applause to all the artists, Natalie Rise, Dub Effects, all the wonderful people coming to perform for us. And there will be another concert tomorrow night that you guys are not going to want to miss. And speaking of artists, our first presenter that we're about to get into is one of our artists, and he's going to be sharing a different side of himself. And before we get to him, I want to explain today's theme. So today's theme is called Agorism and Parallel Networks. And if you've been here before, if you guys have been around our event, you understand what agorism is. I'll give you a real quick lowdown. It's essentially this idea that we can build parallel systems, parallel economies. And last year we played a video that we created for the creator of Agorism, the founder of it. His name was Samuel Konkin III. He was a Canadian man, Canadian illegal immigrant in the US who was here during the 60s and 70s during the student movements. And he basically grew sick and tired of watching people try politics and came to realize politics wasn't going to be the way to solve our problems. He also realized that violence wasn't going to be the way to solve our problems. And he started brainstorming, okay, if we're not going to use violence, if we're not going to use politics, and if we don't want to just give up and be apathetic, then what else is there? And so he started thinking about creating parallel systems. Instead of using their system, what if we just build our own? And he focused specifically more on the economy side and talking about using black and gray markets, taking your money out of their systems and building alternative economies. And he wrote a couple of books, and he unfortunately passed away in 2004. But in the age of the internet, his ideas have lived on and inspired people like me. And I've written about them in my books, and I've kind of taken his ideas, and you guys might have heard me or John or other people use the phrase exit and build. Has anybody heard that phrase recently in the last couple of years, exit, build? Thankfully, it's been getting out there. A lot more people have learned about this idea. That is very much inspired by Samuel Konkin, because I sort of took what he was talking about economically and just applied it to all areas of our life. If we're talking about the medical system, education system, anything that you see a problem in, well, then to me, the solution is let's exit from that system and let's build a better one, or let's support those who are building the better ones, right? And that's why we're focused on parallel systems, parallel societies. And so that's what today is all about. And as with all of our themes, each of our speakers interpret that in their own way. You're going to hear me later talk about building a parallel system when it comes to drug addiction and recovery. We're going to hear people talking about building parallel systems when it comes to the digital space and when it comes to publishing and music and education and knowledge. There's going to be a lot of varieties of this theme. But in general, we're talking about building parallel systems. So you guys down for that? You ready for that? All right. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's not waste any more time. Please give a warm welcome to Grant Ellman to the stage as he drops some knowledge for us.
What's going on, everybody? How we doing today? Thanks so much for being here. First thing, top of the day, top of the morning. I appreciate y'all showing up for this. So for those of you who aren't familiar with me, my name's Grant Ellman. Some of you may know me by my music project, Presence. And yeah, I'm just really, really grateful to be here. This is my third People's Reset. I want to really give a big shout out to Derek and Miriam for all of the hard work that they do to put this event together, and all the members of the team and all the members of the community who make this possible. It's really just a blessing to be able to gather with all these like-minded, beautiful people. So I'm grateful to share today a little bit of a different side of my work and what I've been doing over the last 7 years, building passive income through Airbnbs and vacation rentals in order to support my passions and to support Agorism, parallel networks, building the parallel systems that we want to build, and creating the financial freedom to have more energy. And as Jason Christoff says, being able to make power moves on the game board of life. So that's what this talk is going to be about today. So we all want more freedom. We want more freedom with our time. We want more freedom financially. And so today I'm going to be sharing a practical strategy. This is going to be a solutions-oriented talk with a very specific strategy that anybody, whether you're old, whether you're young, literally a 12-year-old could implement this if they really wanted to go out and hustle and do this. So anybody could apply this to their own life and create more financial freedom for themselves. But we're going to go one step beyond the financial freedom as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about true wealth, which in my definition is fulfillment. How do we actually create more freedom so that we can find more fulfillment in our lives and really feel that sense of purpose with what we're doing here? So today I'm going to get into a little bit of my background, my personal healing journey of how I got to this point and how I, got to the point of wanting to do this. I'm going to give you this practical solution that you can apply literally tomorrow in the next 72 hours. If you really wanted to and you put your mind to it, you could start generating passive income using this strategy in the next 72 hours. And then at the end, I'm going to get into how we can start to think about investing our time, investing our energy, investing this currency of our attention and our intention so that we can create more freedom within and then more inner fulfillment, which in my opinion is the real thing that all of us are after. So with that, I'm going to not bore you too much with my journey, my past, but I want to get into a little bit of my roots and explain how I got on this path. So let's go to the next slide there, please. So I was born and raised in Portland, Oregon. I was raised in a really strong, loving two-parent household, a really strong family. And then when I was 14 years old, my father tragically passed away completely unexpectedly due to taking a prescription medication exactly as it was prescribed by his doctor. A lot of us are familiar with the fact that the medical system is pretty much the leading cause of death in this world. And that was my first experience of that, having to lose my dad as a 14-year-old. And this created a ton of shock and trauma. And it turned my whole life upside down because it was completely unexpected. And we did win a medical malpractice lawsuit, which his lawyers paid out. But of course, no amount of finances would ever replace my father. And at the time, I was just a young kid. I was 14, so I didn't really have any emotional tools to process this incredible loss. And so I developed a lot of anger and a lot of pain, and I expressed this outwardly, carrying a lot of unprocessed grief into my late teenage years. And, I don't want to, swear too much here, but for lack of a better word, I became quite a bully and quite a dickhead to all my friends around me. I would just, jab and poke fun at people. And I didn't have any way of expressing this anger. So I just, put it on all the people around me who I loved. And this was, really not cool and not at all. And so let's go to the next slide, please. Oh yeah, that's a little picture of me and my father there. And on the next slide, we'll go to the next one. So all of this really culminated when I was 18. I graduated from high school, and a few of my homies and I took a trip to the big island of Hawaii, where I set the intention that I wanted to have my first ayahuasca journey at the age of 18. And hey, what's up? He did make it. He said he wasn't going to make it. But yeah, so you can see a few pictures here from the big island. And so I did a work exchange on my friend's mom's farm. And I just had this intention with my two good friends that we would have this ayahuasca journey if it found us. And as the medicine usually does, the medicine did find us. We didn't have to seek it out. And it just ended up manifesting the perfect situation. We found ourselves in this beautiful outdoor maloca, which you can see there. We were surrounded by the ayahuasca vines that we would be drinking that evening. And unfortunately, that night I got absolutely rocked. I got my ego completely annihilated in this experience, what I would call an eternal punishment, where I was just looping in this eternal hell for about 6 hours. I was smashing my head against the wall. The facilitators couldn't do anything to stop it. And as I integrated this experience later in my life, what I realized was that this was essentially the consequences, the natural law consequences of all of the grief, all of the anger and the trauma that I had felt and taken on in my heart and then expressed outwardly onto other people. And I had to relive that through those 6 hours and feel all the pain that I'd caused to other people. And so this pretty much led me to realize that my trauma was running the whole show in my life. And this ceremony really marked the beginning of starting to take personal responsibility for my own healing and working to go within and heal myself so that I could not be constantly expressing these negative emotions and this grief and trauma outwards onto everyone around me. And so let's go to the next slide, please. And so this led me into some more continued intentional work with psychedelics. This is where my kind of healing journey really took off, where I started to go out on these solo vision quests. I would go out into the mountains and the desert by myself, and I would take psychedelic medicine intentionally with the intention to go deep within myself and look at myself and figure out how I could, deal with my inner demons. And over that time, it created a meditation practice where I started to meditate oftentimes for an hour or more every day. And I started to have a lot of these direct intuitive experiences and these sort of creative downloads that were coming through in this experience. And I would say that I was starting to communicate with what I would consider to be higher dimensional beings from, angels, or some people might call it Arcturians, Pleiadians, whatever you want to call it, but some kind of higher dimensional beings beyond what we would perceive in this reality. And throughout this experience, I kept feeling like music was this core theme, that I needed to express music as a way of, bringing service to the world, doing something that I could take my gifts and be of service to others. And I had this one really profound experience one time where I was out in the desert by myself, and I was communicating with this one star, and the star started flashing in all these beautiful colors, and it literally downloaded a musical composition directly into my brain, into my third eye. And I later was able to produce that into one of the first tunes that I now look back on as, a form of real authentic inspiration. So throughout all these experiences, I just had this growing certainty that music was my life purpose, and I needed to use music as a tool to uplift human consciousness and also to continue to work through my own trauma. And let's go to the next slide, please, gentlemen. This ultimately led me to realize that there was this conflict between my purpose. I wanted to share my music and share my passions, but also that there was a need for survival. I graduated from a music school, and after that, I had no real financial roadmap. I didn't really know how I was going to support myself financially. Having a degree, as we all know, even if you have a degree from a really prestigious college, it doesn't mean that you're going to get a good job and be able to make any kind of real income. And so for a while, I worked a bunch of odd jobs. I would do freelance photography and videography, and I did some tech support at a major office. And it just felt completely unaligned with my soul and unsustainable, especially compared to, these downloads that I'd had of being of service with music. And so I had this clear rejection of being on the 9-to-5 grind on one hand and having someone else be my boss. And I really wanted to live life on my own terms. But at the same time, I also didn't want to be the proverbial starving artist, right? We have all heard this, where there's this kind of, I don't know, it's almost like a victim mentality where people identify with artists never making it and never making income and just always having to scrape by. And I knew that that also wasn't what I wanted. I wanted to be able to live comfortably. I wanted to be able to invest in the equipment that I needed to really be able to do my art and live my passions on the highest level. Let's go to the next slide, por favor. And then as all of this was materializing, I had a brutal ski accident where I broke my tib fib. As you can see here on the left side, that's my big bone in my shin that was fractured, and then the resulting rod on the right side that went through my bone marrow to stitch it back together. And this experience was I like to refer to what Paul Chek calls the pain teacher. Sometimes in life, when we're not fully aligned with our purpose, we'll have a significant injury or significant form of pain that comes in to just shake us out of our slumber and wake us up and say, hey, like, you got to get your shit together, if you know what I'm saying. So this was that for me. I was just being a ski bum, kind of just like screwing off every day. I wasn't really doing anything with my purpose. I wasn't, being of service to others in any way. I was just like skiing every day and just like, blowing all my money and stuff like that. And then this accident broke me, and I had to just sit with myself for months as I healed, and also realized that I was going to be broke financially from all the medical bills that ensued. So let's go to the next slide. So that's enough of my story. This is where I discovered passive income, because I realized that I needed to figure out how to support myself financially. And this is really the meat of the talk, what I want to share today. And I started going on YouTube, right? And even though I had a degree from a college, I still feel like in a lot of ways, YouTube is the most valuable university. You can learn any skill on YouTube and all the information out there to build any business, to do any form of creative pursuit. Literally everything's out there. We can learn everything we need for free. And so this was kind of my first exposure to this concept of passive income. Anybody here, you want to raise your hand if you've heard of this term passive income before? Let's just get a show of hands. Okay, cool. Most people here know what this means, but I'll define it just in case anybody isn't familiar with the term. The way I would define passive income is it's a recurring income stream from effort that you've done in the past. That's why it's called passive. Or it could also be from systems that you've built in the past that allow you to earn a recurring income stream. And this would be in contrast to, the typical paradigm that we're programmed into, which is that we always need to just be trading our time for money. We're working a job and then earning a paycheck or some kind of a wage or some kind of a salary. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. It's just that I realized that that wasn't the only way to do things. And I think this was a real revelation. And this is what I want to share today. So the observation that I began to make as I started to observe people who were successful was that most wealthy people earn some form of passive income or another. And a lot of times it's multiple streams of passive income where they're able to earn income off of things that they've built in the past and then be able to use their time exactly how they want and make their own schedule to do whatever they want, essentially live life on their own terms. But beyond this, the realization that I came to is that money does not equal fulfillment, right? We all have seen so many examples of how many wealthy, miserable people there are out there, people who have so-called made it to the top. They've gotten all the houses, all the cars, they've accumulated all the wealth, and they're still miserable. So, and I've also experienced this, trying to buy my way to happiness and realizing that it just creates this empty pit that we can never fulfill within ourselves. So this is what I want to get into at the end of the talk is like, I think fulfillment, the true fulfillment comes from our creative essence. It never comes from consumption. And I think that the shift from this consumptive mindset that we're programmed into a creative mindset is what's going to generate real fulfillment, right? Let's get into the next slide here. How many people have heard this term? You need money to make money. How many people have heard somebody say that before? It's one of the most common programs that we're taught, right? That you can't make money unless you have some kind of initial investment. And I think this is one of the main things that keeps people trapped in a state of scarcity. It's like, oh, well, if I don't have anything right now, then I'll never be able to free myself from the matrix because I need some kind of initial investment. And in my opinion, this is completely malarkey. It's cultural programming. And in my opinion, what you actually need is you need a valuable skill. You need a clear offer that you can use to encapsulate that skill that you can then deliver with integrity into the market. And if you can do those three things, have a defined skill and a clear offer, and then just deliver that offer with integrity into the market, you can earn a good living that way. So one of the observations that I've made being at a lot of these kind of conferences and in freedom communities and things like that is that there's not a lack of skills. Like, everybody at events like this is full of amazing skills and amazing gifts and amazing talents. But I think where we get stuck and where we get hung up a lot of the time is that there's a lack of clarity and structure and a clear offer that we can then just deliver to the market and follow through with integrity, and then be able to actually earn a nice income from that. So let's go to the next slide, please. So what is this passive income model that I'm going to share today? This is short-term rentals and property management. And I did not create this model. I learned this from a mentor. And I think this is another important point, is that we don't need to reinvent the wheel in order to become financially free. We can study something that somebody else has done, and we can just implement a strategy into our own lives, and then we can create financial freedom that way. We don't necessarily have to create a new eureka idea or create something completely from scratch. And one of the reasons that I was attracted to this particular business model was because I like to live in alignment with natural law, which is actually what Will Keller is going to be talking about in this next talk. But one of my mentors, Mark Passio, he talks about this idea of right livelihood, which is, how can we earn our income in a way that doesn't cause harm or doesn't initiate harm to other sentient beings? And if we're able to do that, then we can also be knowing that we're living in alignment with natural law, which the vast majority of income streams on this earth are not. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're, going into more slavery and more bondage, because so many people are willing to do immoral stuff for a paycheck. So I was attracted to this business model for that reason. So let's get into, thank you. Yeah, thank you. Let's get into first, what is the offer, right? Because I said, in order to, do something with integrity to the market, we have to have a clear, well-defined offer. So this is how it's going to look. You're going to find somebody who owns a property. You don't have to be the one who owns the house or owns the property. You're going to say, "Hi there, my name is Grant Oman. I'm a vacation rentals and property management expert, and I'd like to partner with you to turn your property into a profitable and amazing short-term rental," something like that. "And I will handle everything for you. It's going to be no additional work for you. I'll create listings for you on multiple platforms like Vrbo, Airbnb, Expedia, all the different platforms. I'll market your place. I'll vet all the guests to make sure that they're, don't have a criminal background, or we know that that's all bullshit, but, make sure that people are, not going to tear the place apart, and that they're going to take care of it as if it was their own home. After every single guest, I'm going to have the place professionally cleaned. I'm going to keep the supplies stocked up so that everything that they might need, like coffee, tea, cream, sugar, nice clean linens and towels and everything like that, is provided as they would expect. I'll make sure that if there's any maintenance issues, if something breaks, that it's going to be handled and taken care of in a timely fashion. At the end of every month, I'm going to take care of all of the bookkeeping. So I'll create a dedicated business bank account. All of the income and expenses for the property will be transparently accounted for. And at the end of the month, I will send you a statement that shows you exactly how the property has performed. And so the real benefit of this offer is it's less work for them than doing a long-term rental, because they don't have to go and put the place on the market every single year after a long-term lease. They don't have to worry about a long-term tenant trashing the place and having to, potentially deal with some costly repairs. They also get to retain personal usage of the place. So if they want to let their friends or family members use it when it's not being rented, they can have first pick of any dates that they can do that. It will be kept in better condition because of the regular professional cleanings and the maintenance. And then at the end of the day, they're going to end up making more profit as well, even after my fee, which is just 20% of the net profit on the place. So that's basically the offer. Does that make sense to everybody? Do we understand what we're taking? This is a practical, very simple business model that anybody can implement, and it's in alignment with natural law because it doesn't cause harm to anyone. So it is a moral business model. It's a win-win for everybody who's involved. So now, how do we actually go about pitching this offer? How do we find people in the marketplace who might be interested in this? What I will do is I'll go on websites like Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Zillow rentals, and I'll look for places specifically that are furnished rentals that are available for long-term rent. I will call the property owner. I won't reach out via text, emails. Nobody cares about text and emails. I want to call them and, let them know that I'm a real human being. And I'll say, hey there, my name's Grant. I'm really interested in your property. When is the soonest that I might be able to come see it? Once they agree to a showing, I will show up in person. I'll dress professionally. I'll make good eye contact with them to let them know that I'm fully present with them and I'm a human being. I'll give them a nice firm handshake. These are things that my mom taught me as a kid. So big up to my mom for teaching me these things. And then I will just do my best to build rapport with this property owner as I walk through the place. They think I'm a prospective tenant who might be renting it. And I'm just going to ask them some personal questions, let them know that I'm interested in them as a person, and I'm going to build rapport with them. And at the end of the showing, if everything looks good, I will deliver the offer, which I just, kind of gave you a summary of, but I'll have like a 60-second pitch that I've practiced, and I will give that to the owner. And then at the end, if they agree, then it's time to deliver on that offer. It's really that simple. It's not complicated, but this is something that anybody could do. Like, as I said before, I think a 10 to 12-year-old child might even have an easier job than adults doing this, because we have all of these fear programs of like, oh, what if I fail? What if they say no? If the first person you reach out to says no, you can just move on to the next person. There's tons of properties out there in any market. You can go into any city, any market, and there will be places that are available for rent that you can do this business model with. So once you have somebody who's agreed to this, it's time to deliver on the offer. And you want to deliver on the offer with integrity. You want to do it with excellence. And if you're able to do that, then you're well on your way to having a nice passive income stream that can support you in fulfilling your passions and your gifts in this lifetime. So the first step to doing that is going to be finding a local team. So there's two main people that you're going to want to hire. And you can use Facebook Marketplace, you can use TaskRabbit, things like that. But you're going to go out into the market and you're going to find a cleaning lady and a handyman. I don't mean to be sexist here, but typically cleaning ladies and handymans, that's just how the cookie crumbles. If it's a cleaning man and a handy lady, that's also wonderful too. But anyways, you're going to go out and find somebody who's solid, right? And you want to pay these people well. You want to treat these people with respect and integrity, because these are the people who are going to be on the ground helping you, cleaning the listing and helping to maintain the listing. And I pay these people really well. My cleaning ladies, she actually is from El Salvador, and now she owns her own entire cleaning company, just cleaning my properties. And she's able to support her entire family. She has a massive family. She bought a house this past year, and she's able to support them simply from the income of cleaning these 6 listings that I manage. And so that feels really good to me, right? It's again, this is about creating a win-win situation. You're creating a win for the property owner. You're creating a win for your team by treating them with respect and care and giving them a good income that they can live off of. You're creating a win for yourself by creating passive income and time freedom. And then, of course, for the guests, the people who come to the Airbnbs. I'm sure everybody here has stayed at an Airbnb sometime or another in their life. Is there anybody out there who actually owns their own Airbnbs or is managing Airbnbs already? I would just be curious if there's anybody else in the room. Okay. Oh, yeah, a couple people back there. Awesome. Is there any chance I could get some water up here? I don't know where that would be amazing. Yes. Oh, no, it's not. That's okay. So anyways, after you've created this local team, you're basically just going to list the property, right? And one of the most important, oh, thank you so much. One of the most important things is having good professional photos taken of the place. When I first started this business out, I would take my own photos of the listings because I do like to take photography. But the thing is professional real estate photographers, they're not that expensive. It's usually $100 to $200, and they will use these nice flashes and allow you to see what's outside of the home as well as what's inside the home. And at the end of the day, that $100 to $200 that you might spend on those listing photos is well worth it, because those are the things that sell the listing at the end of the day. And then once you've listed the place, you can actually list it on several platforms, and you can use a software. I use one called Hospitable, and it actually uses it takes all of the listings that you have out there and it synchronizes all the calendars together. So that way you can be advertising to the broadest possible market. And at the same time, you're preventing yourself from having any double bookings or anything like that. It will make sure that your pricing is maximizing the profit potential of the place. And then it can also automate. Oh, thank you, Miriam. Big up, Miriam. We love this lady. She's amazing. Thank you so much. And so, yeah, so this software will allow you to basically automate and streamline every aspect of managing these listings so that you can basically take your time back and not have to be sending all of the messages. All of that stuff will be happening automatically. And over time, once you've set these systems up, it turns into passive income because you're building systems. You're putting systems in place that allow this to basically happen on autopilot so that you're able to earn a nice living while you sleep. And the automation is handling the majority of the workload, and you're just owning and overseeing the business, making sure your clients are taken care of, making sure your guests are taken care of, and making sure that your staff is taken care of. And then you will have so much more time freedom to be able to invest in doing the things that you feel are the most important in your life, whether it's spending time with family and friends, whether it's, practicing a musical instrument or working on an art project or, whatever it might be. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Oh yeah, we're already on the next slides. So once you have this basic foundation set up, this is where it gets into scaling the business and automating. And, I was going to use the term crushing it or killing it or something like that, but Derek has a better term, which is healing it. Instead of killing it, let's change the name to healing it, right? So this is where it comes in, right? We want to be healing it. We want to be doing amazing, excellent work with this business. And at the end of the day, it's always going to be the first listing that's the hardest one, because as I said before, you're going to have that self-doubt come in when you go to pitch that first owner. And if you do get denied, you just have to pick yourself up and just do it again, right? And once you get that first listing, you're going to have proof of your success. You're going to have those income statements that you give to the owners. And over time, you're going to see that income compounds into something really amazing. And your integrity that you show with your clients is going to compound. And eventually, you'll just have more clients coming to you where you won't even need to go out into the marketplace and look for them. I've had several of my clients who just reached out to me via word of mouth because they saw that I was doing excellent work for other people in the area. And over time, you're going to get more and more reviews on your listings. And when you consistently are able to get good reviews, like you can see on my Airbnb account here, have almost 1,900 reviews over 7 years and over a 4.9 star average rating across all 6 of my listings. And once you have this, you'll get like super host badges and premier host badges. And at the end of the day, you have to realize that all these platforms like Airbnb and Vrbo, they're just search engines. They're just a massive marketplace, and they're trying to find the best place for a guest to stay. So if you're consistently delivering with excellence, like you can see one of my listings here on the left, then it's going to literally push your listings up to the top of the market, and it's going to promote yours at the top so that you're going to have an advantage, right? And this is what you're going to offer to your clients moving forward. All right. Woo. So with all of that said, this is the basic structure of the business. Hopefully this is making sense to everybody. It's not a complicated business model, but I think it's a really powerful one that almost anybody, if they put their mind to it, they could implement this without a college degree, without any kind of special education. It's a simple skill that you can learn. Anybody can learn it. You create a simple offer, you go out into the market, and then you deliver that offer to your clients with integrity, right? So let's go to the next slide, por favor. Is this the perfect form of passive income? In my opinion, no, it's not, because at the end of the day, you're going to still be responsible. This requires a large degree of personal responsibility. You're the business owner. You're always going to be on call. You're not going to be able to clock out of a job. You're not going to be able to say, oh, someone else is my boss. You're the boss now, right? With that more personal responsibility, though, you gain so much more freedom. And in my opinion, it's well worth it. you're going to be managing assets, right? In my personal business, I'm managing tens of millions of dollars of assets for my clients. And so as a result, I have a really large responsibility to the owners of the properties to make sure that they're kept in immaculate condition, to the guests to make sure that they're having a good experience. If anything goes wrong, it falls back on me. And my staff, as I said before, I always have to make sure that my staff feel like they're treated respectfully and taken care of, because they're the ones who are doing the legwork to make sure that all of this runs smoothly. So at the end of the day, it's a minimal amount of daily work. Sometimes I'll spend 10, 20, 30 minutes a day overseeing this. But at the end of the day, you're also not able to clock out. You're not able to just check out and go completely offline. So this isn't going to be for everyone. But I think this balance of freedom and responsibility is something that I've thought a lot about. And this is why I've chosen to keep this business relatively small, because I want to make sure that my clients feel like they're getting a really boutique service and that they're really being taken care of, and that all of my guests are getting a really high level of service. And that's what creates that excellence, rather than some of these massive Airbnb companies that just go into cities, buy up hundreds of homes, turn them all into Airbnbs, and it's all just kind of like mediocre. You know, they might be getting 4-star reviews consistently, 4.2. They're just not able to give that real human touch, that real level of connection with their clients. So at the end of the day, this passive income can be really powerful. It can allow you to focus on your dreams and your goals and doing things that are more fulfilling. And I think this is where the talk of agorism and parallel networks comes in, right? How do we use this in order to be more of service? How do we use this to build the parallel systems that we want to build and create a better world for people? So with that, let's go to the next slide, por favor. This is a really key point that I want to stress, is just this idea of spending versus investing. And I think this applies to both time and money, but most importantly, time. The way I would define spending is it's easy, it's instant gratification, and it builds little fulfillment. Investing, on the other hand, requires effort. It creates delayed gratification, and it builds more fulfillment in the long term. So as it relates to financials, spending can, we can just try to spend our way to happiness, but we're never going to get there. We see that some of the wealthiest people in the world are still miserable because they're trying to spend their way to happiness. However, if we invest, especially I'm really big on precious metals and cryptocurrencies, and those have helped to get outside of the mainstream, petrodollar system, so that we can take our currency, our energy back, and then build more resiliency by taking our money out of the banks and not funding any wars or genocides that comes from having our money in the big banks. And then as it relates to time, cheers, as it relates to time, we all know how it feels when we're spending our time, right? When we're just passively entertaining ourselves, scrolling Instagram or watching YouTube for hours at a time. It's a passive form of entertainment, and it drains our dopamine. So when we have more time freedom, we can choose to do that, or we can choose to invest our time. We can choose to create and build more self-love and build more purpose and build more fulfillment. So the point of this talk is to say passive income is not for being passive people. Passive income is a tool that we can use to become activists. It's a tool that we can use to support our activism and then become more active players and in this game of life, in order to create more fulfillment, create more joy, create more inspiration, and do what we're really here to do. And at the end of the day, I think fulfillment is the real metric of true wealth. So let's go to the next slide. I was recently listening to Richard Grove. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Richard Grove and autonomy. And one of the amazing things that he teaches about in autonomy is how true mastery just begins with mastery over our schedule. It's time management. And I want to take a minute to honor this man, Derek Bros, right here, who's a true master of his schedule. He's absolutely, being able to have total intention with his time, to be able to achieve the kinds of things that this man has achieved. And that's really been an inspiration for me and thinking about how we can use our schedule to reflect our goals and intentions. If we don't schedule our time actively, the unconscious programming is going to take over, and that's going to run our lives. And for the vast majority of people, the unconscious programming is what's running our schedule rather than an intentional, disciplined structure that allows us to build our day towards the fulfillment of our dreams and our highest potential. So yeah, big up Derek. Also Zek here in the front row, master of his schedule as evidenced by his work. People like Benji, Mr. Dub Effects. You know, there's a lot of inspiring people in this room who have clearly been able to get to that next level through just intentionally working on their schedule and working on themselves to be able to be more of service to this reality. So let's go to the next slide, por favor. So if anybody is interested, if anybody is into this, feels inspired by this idea of creating more passive income, I'm actually going to be doing a 12-week mastermind starting in mid-February. And the whole idea behind this mastermind is that we can use passive income as a tool to create more sovereignty. We all want to create permaculture. We all want to live in intentional communities. We all have big dreams of how we can expand and live in more alignment with our purpose. And so this is going to be a mastermind where I take people step by step through all the things that I've talked about in this talk. And by the end, everybody in the mastermind should be able to have their first successful passive income listing. So that's what I'm going to be offering. If anybody's interested, you can just shoot me an email, grant@presencemusic.com. And yeah, in closing, I just want to say thank you so much once again to Derek and Miriam and to all the homies here. I'm so grateful to be surrounded by so many like-minded individuals. Thank you so much for being present today for this first talk, and I really hope this was valuable. And let's go to the last slide here if we can. Oh, wait. Yeah, I think there's one more. I just want to say we got this. We can do this together, you guys. Let's build some systems together. Let's build some systems that allow us to reclaim our time freedom. Once we reclaim our time freedom, we can live more creatively and we can live with more purpose. And then once we're able to do that, we can be more of service with our gifts. And in my opinion, as I said before, wealth is measured by our fulfillment, not by our finances. So let's build that fulfillment together. I hope you all have a beautiful day. Thank you so much, and peace.
Yeah, give it up for Grant. Give it up for Grant one more time. Talented musician and a talented speaker. Wow, who would have known? All right, we're going to go to real quick. Just want to give a thanks to one of our sponsors. Grant mentioned crypto, and I know that we have a mixed crowd of people who have different feelings about crypto. I just want to mention one that we feel pretty good about that we've been working with. They're called Zano. Is anybody familiar with Zano? Or they're barely new the last couple of years. They are one of the newest and most secure and most private cryptos that exist. If you know about Monero and Zano are kind of partnered together. We've been, they've sponsored it, they paid us in their own stable coin, not the scary stable coins like the government stable coins that many of us are concerned about, like, CBDCs. But for example, when they paid us for our sponsorship, they sent it to me and I was able to put it in the Freedom Dollar stable coin. And instead of it going up and down like Bitcoin and other things, it stayed at that exact amount. So then when we needed to pull it out to pay for our bills, it was that exact amount. So if you want to learn more, you can go to zano.org. There's all the details about their security, their privacy, and we'll be talking more about them. We have one of their team members going to speak on Saturday on our Tech Day. So thank you to Zano for supporting us. Please give them a round of applause because they help make this happen. And then I want to invite Elena, if you're still in the room, come up here real quick. Who's going to the Monarch Butterfly Sanctuary in a couple of days? Who's going to be joining us? To tell us about that real quick, we have our lovely Elena. Give her a round of applause.
Good morning, everybody. So just want to real quick say that if anybody is interested in going, you can reach out to me. Just say hi. And if you RSVP'd and you are still to pay, also, please come and meet me so that we can secure the spaces and we can fill up the bus and all go together and have a great time. There's info on the website about it if you need to know more, and you can always ask me too. All right. Thank you. Have a great day.
Just look for the woman with the butterflies on her. All right. Okay, so let's keep it rolling. Who here is familiar with natural law or has heard this concept over the years? Great. Who's familiar with Mark Passio? Yeah, Mark spoke at our event a couple of years ago. Well, our next speaker is somebody who I think is going to rock your world and blow your minds. And for those who are new to natural law, he's going to give you everything you need to know. And to those who are familiar with it, I think he's going to help you understand why it's important. You know, we're pursuing freedom, we're pursuing parallel societies, but if those parallel societies don't have the right foundation, maybe they're not going to last. So I want you guys to give a warm welcome, nice big applause to first-time speaker Will Keller. All right, let's give it up for Will one more time. Will's going to blow your minds, guys. We'll pop it up.
Awesome. All right, greetings. Yes, first time at the TPR event, and I'm thrilled. A lot of great conversations, and I'm excited to deliver this talk because what I can offer you, I saw a lot of hands went up that have heard of natural law. And I think this is a topic that needs to be talked about more from different perspectives, and I'm going to offer some really good clarity today. So we'll go to, so the title of my presentation is Natural Law, the Blueprint for a Free Society, Why Freedom Must Be Designed on Moral Ground. And this whole event is about solutions and building and constructing, and the process of building something is objective, right? It starts in the mind. You have an idea. Then you create a blueprint. You have your foundation, your structure, the aesthetics. These are all aspects of the natural world that are objective. So I'm going to bring out a question. How can we build a free society if we do not understand what freedom is? This might sound interesting to a lot of people here, but I think this is important. My motto is simplify the profound. If we can't explain and describe what freedom is or how we achieve freedom, then we're going to have a lot of issues, a lot of mentally perceived confusion amongst a lot of circles and groups of people. So the missing blueprint, the most important knowledge for human freedom was never taught and is being ignored. This is something that as we're in our childhood, parenting, public schooling in general, right? Even in culture itself, this information is completely missing. And the small amounts of teachers and educators, it is being vastly ignored by the population, right? So without it, societies confuse control for order and obedience for harmony. Classic government social engineer tactic to invert reality. Like Alec talked about in his presentation, it's all about perception management. Why? Because your perception and your worldview, the information that you hold in your mind and in your heart, dictates the choices and actions that you take. So perception management for behavior control. So the information that you hold, this is what I call the missing blueprint. We have the idea, we want freedom. We want to achieve freedom. We want to build communities, right? What's that blueprint? And this is what we're going to dive into today. So first I want to lay the foundation, right? Foundation is the first things. And of course, this is nature, right? Nature itself is the greatest mentor. Some of the greatest minds in history, Nikola Tesla, Victor Schauberger, Wilhelm Reich, Royal Rife, all of these people observed nature and then mimicked it, right? To create incredible systems. And you could see the image on there. That's Bill Mollison. We had fantastic permaculture topics yesterday, and this is the interaction and the relationship that we have not only with each other but within life, right? So reality is relational. Nothing in nature exists in isolation. Everything operates through relationship and interaction. Understanding these relationships is the first step towards understanding order, responsibility, and freedom. Miriam started this whole event talking about relationships, right? Everyone and everything is interconnected. So this is the relationship. Relation to what? Well, relation to the people in this room, to my friends, family, excuse me, my daughter. But one thing that's not talked about is your relationships to principles, values. These things in the world are so easily discarded, left and right, for the majority of people. What are those principles and values? This is important because this is what lays the structure and the foundation. So as we're talking about nature and how everything is interconnected and it's based on relationships, what is the condition of those relationships? Nature itself is lawful, meaning nature operates according to consistent principles called laws, not randomness or opinion. These governing patterns are what we call laws of nature or natural laws. Most people understand the laws of physics. Even modern science understands that these are constant governing dynamics, which is the definition of law itself. Law does not change. It is not whimsical. It is objective and binding. So, but what we don't talk about is the metaphysical laws. Excuse me, give a drink some hydrogen water. Now, the metaphysical laws obviously are energetic and based upon consciousness. And we need to understand our place in reality, in nature. There's so much back and forth about objective and subjective, and here is the balanced and the truthful approach. We are each individuals having a subjective experience in an objective reality. That objective reality is the laws of nature. It is natural law, the governing dynamics that construct reality, reorder, the basis on how everything operates and how everything interacts. And we can call this natural law. Now, natural law can apply to all kinds of different things. You can talk about it in every category. Health, it's a science. But what we don't talk about is how we interact with each other through relationships and the purpose of that. The principles that respond to action and not perception. This is the type of natural law that I'm talking about. We're talking about morality. Morality has a lot of baggage. When you say that word, most people immediately think of religion or relative morality. But I'm here to say that morality is not an opinion. It's based in science, it's based in nature, it's based in inherent natural law. So right and wrong are not matters of preference or culture, time or location. They can be objectively evaluated and by whether actions cause harm or support well-being. Very easy. The definition of morality from Latin moralis is the difference between right and wrong. Now, I understand a lot of people here might know this, right? What is the definition of a right? It seems simple, but if we don't know our definitions and we can't express this to other people, if you don't know, then you can be taken advantage of. And this is the whole premise of what government does to the populace because they don't know these simple definitions. A right is any action that does not cause or initiate harm to another sentient being. Even the wrongdoings, we can look at that because there's an infinite amount of right actions that we can take. But if we look at it in the negative, what are the wrongdoings? We can sum those down to just a few, right? Murder, assault, rape, theft, coercion, and deception. Those are all a external taking of something from someone else. I'm not talking about vices. Vices are internal. They're part of that subjective experience. But as we relate to us and individuals, we are going to interact. What's that condition of that interaction? Is it initiating harm or is it supporting well-being? And the root of slavery. We all here understand that humanity is at a very tough position. Through their ignorance, they are supporting and condoning their own oppression, right? The question is why? Asking that question leads you on a quest. And that root of slavery is when morality becomes relative. There is no shared standard to identify harm. In that vacuum, coercion, domination, slavery take hold. So absolutely, morality is objective from that definition that I gave you. What does that give us? It gives us a structure, an objective standard by which we can gauge the condition of our relationships, right? This is very important. And it's objective, it's across the board. Doesn't matter, different time period, location, culture. Human beings can write something down on paper. It doesn't matter. Morality itself is objective because of the initiation and the harm created or the support of well-being. Now, natural moral law is the objective framework that governs human interaction through cause and effect. It reveals how behavior produces harmony or disorder in a shared reality, right? So this is the natural law. If we're talking about electricity, there are natural laws that govern that, right? You don't want to touch a ground wire. You don't want to jump off a cliff. You don't want to touch fire. Objective laws say that the fire will burn you, you will fall down, or you will shock yourself, right? There is a cause and effect there. And from when I talked about what the rights are and the wrongdoings that lead to that objective standard, we can really sum it down to a phrase of don't steal and don't kneel. We understand the non-aggression principle, the self-defense principle. Both of those together and married, you have self-ownership, meaning you are responsible for your actions and behaviors. Now, this is widely controlled through institutions and government. Why? Well, if you can control the meaning of right and wrong, you absolutely can be the arbiters of truth and the arbiters of right and wrong, meaning whatever you say goes. And that's exactly what these institutions and governments been doing for a long time. So they seek to define right and wrong because moral control shapes perception, therefore shapes your choice and behavior. When conscience, right, have with knowledge, that's what conscience is. The exercise of conscience is actually acting. It's an action, but conscience, the voice that we hear, is knowledge itself. Con being with, sciere being science, being knowledge, with knowledge of what? right and wrong, objective morality. So when conscious is outsourced, responsibility and freedom are weakened and absolutely completely destroyed. This is why objective morality, natural rights are very important to discuss and have these conversations. Because as I asked that question, how do we know what freedom is? And I put an emphasis on that. That's because freedom is an effect of a cause. And that cause is through individuals understanding objective morality, right and wrong, and then making the conscious choice to perform those right actions. Grant talked about right livelihood. Thank you. So freedom cannot be imposed or granted by human authority. It emerges only when individuals and communities align with natural moral law. This is that structure that we need to understand. And I'm here to tell you that we need to talk about that more often. Objective morality, natural rights, as the structure. Understanding that nature, natural law is cause and effect. So if we are striving for freedom and a moral community, those intentions, those are the first principles. Principles itself, principal means first things. You put it first always. Lainey's talk was fantastic, and she had the little sheet of, what is your intentional community and what do you stand for and what do you provide, and then it had the value systems. Those value systems need to be understood, that it's always the first principles of morality, right and wrong, and right action. Because from there, that's the starting point that's going to dictate the condition and the health of an individual, of a community, of a society, of the relationship we have with nature, and as the stewards of this planet through that action. Okay, cool, perfect. Didn't start my timer. So here's another natural law. I do believe that as humans evolve, we will come to know it's directly proportional. Human evolution and the understanding and the application of the knowledge of natural laws, right? So as we align ourselves morally, we are going to elevate and evolve. That's what evolution truly is. It's not the propagation of genes, right? It's consciousness. This has been proven through epigenetics. So what's that information that takes us from a very poor situation on this planet to one of freedom and right action, right? Unslaved. And of course, this starts with individuals unslaving themselves. Here's a natural law principle. Awareness reveals choice. The moment you become aware of how things work, you realize you were never trapped. You were unconscious of the choice. Awareness reveals choice. You take in information. That information is added to your worldview, which dictates your behavior, right? So this is why this is so powerful. Everyone here is taking in valuable information from these presenters and fantastic topics. That is information that's added to your worldview, where you can go back home and act upon that. Because nature always requires a sacrifice. And I don't necessarily mean that as a dark term. It's both. It's positive and negative, right? Through humanity's ignorance, we are sacrificing freedom, sovereignty, consent, our children, the most important, right? So the information is so valuable because the law of manifestation requires action. That's what nature requires. If you want to get from point A to point B, action is required itself. Life is not passive, it's interactive. From the blueprint to symbiotic systems. So, knowledge alone is not enough. Natural law must be lived, taught, and modeled. When moral education becomes culture, parallel systems rooted in moral first principles will thrive. Now, nature always wants harmony, balance, symbiosis. There's so much romanticizing in nature, right? Nature is all pure abundance. I agree with that. Or, the materialist is like, oh, nature's all chaos and death. Yeah, I agree with that. The truth is nature, it is. It just is. It's everything. It's all encompassing. We can understand nature. Nature itself is the blueprint for humanity to understand ourselves and how to operate in the world. We observe it. We mimic it. We explore. We experiment. This is the scientific method. But through our coming into knowledge and activation, there's something that's very important that is lacking in many of the spiritual and truth communities, and that is communicating what you have come to know and learn. In the modern age, we call it being a content creator, being an influencer. Yes, that is the scientific method. You come to a conclusion, you put out your results. This is why I'm up here, right? I'm putting out my results. Like, look, objective morality must be understood to get humans into a condition of symbiosis. And the blueprint is objective morality and natural law, right? The inherent dynamics that generate, that give us the effect of freedom. Moral right action is the cause. Freedom is the effect. Of course, the government institutions and, they want to sell you on all these different pathways and modalities of being the arbiter of spirituality or creation. You're here now, in it, being alive, existing, interacting with the natural world. There is no middleman. There's no middleman for freedom. There's no middleman for your spirituality. It's you having that subjective experience in objective reality. Reality, right? The one verse, the one song. The real reset is returning to basics. Freedom is built by restoring how we interact with one another by choosing moral action, taking responsibility, and influencing the world through activation. The future doesn't need to be reinvented. It needs to be remembered. This is the whole crux of my work. Thank you. The whole crux of my work is that humanity has forgot the most basic, foundational, vital information, the elements of life, the elementary. And through this ignorance, we have developed a sickness, a condition, right? Alex Gray is the artist on the image for the acorn. This is a powerful symbol. It's free will choice, right? But free will is only potential. It's not actual. Meaning there are things that you need to do to activate your free will choice. How do you know you're not under mind control, right? There's a process to come to understand yourself, your thoughts, emotions, and action. Is there internal confusion? This is why moral law is so important. Understanding right and wrong. Understanding the condition that you are in. Because when there's internal confusion, conscience says one thing, heart says another, and your actions speak otherwise, then you absolutely are in internal confusion, and that will lead to external control, and that's not free will actualized. It's being influenced. It's being mind controlled. So the acorn is a perfect example of that. Acorn and an oak tree, genetically identical. Same. So what's the difference? Right? You can't get lumber out of an acorn. So the acorn itself is the representation of activation, of willpower activating under the right conditions. The acorn's got to be in the soil. It does that during winter, so the soil is saturated, and the hard shell gets soft, and then it can sprout and become an oak tree. You are in the People's Reset. This is the conditions to actualize free will, right? To become that acorn, or what we call seeds. You're planting seeds. How do those seeds become an oak tree? Through willpower and care and activation. So I changed, this is my last slide, and I changed the words on it. Natural law. The blueprint for a free society is morality. Freedom can only be designed on moral ground, right? Thank you. So understanding that blueprint, that nature has provided everything for us to succeed, it's on us to understand that our structure within our own individual lives, within the family dynamic, in our communities, must be based on that foundational structure of morality, but talked about and expressed and educating other people about this basic foundational information so we can pass it on to the next generations. I love how Derek touched a couple times on the 7 generations. This is an indigenous concept I very much align with, being an animist. This is also a concept that the social engineers very, very well understand and implement. If you can plan out the next 7 generations, then you have that condition in the palm of your hand. So what is the available information being talked about today? It needs to be the blueprint of objective morality and natural law, so we can have the true People's Reset that expands from this 0 point out into the external world. And everyone here is an acorn. So let's get it. There we go.
Yeah, make some noise for Will Keller, everybody. We're going to take some questions. We still got time for questions. You down for some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, all right. We got one over here. And anybody else, feel free to raise your hand. We'll get to you next.
Thank you for the presentation, brother. Yeah, I really appreciate the slide about the moral relativism. I think it's important to bring that into awareness. Quick question, and forgive me if this is a little bit metaphysical, so it would be great if you can provide a response that's more grounded. The ancient Chinese philosopher Confucius was quoted in saying that signs and symbols rule the world, not law and order. And I'd love to get curious to know what your thoughts on that, about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I love metaphysical questions. I think a lot of times cultures and esoteric knowledge are talking about a lot of the same things just from different perspectives. So here's an example on how I would answer your question. Mathematics is a completely artificial, man-made construct. It's our interpretation of nature itself. Nature doesn't work in numbers. It works in pressure mediation and ratios. Yet we can find the golden ratio in everything, the torus field. So it's our interpretation that leads us to build a language called mathematics or arithmetics. So yes, the signs and symbols are absolutely a part of nature's experience. And us as human beings, this is what separates us from the animal kingdom. I do not say human beings are animals. We are in a totally different category. We are an integral species of the mineral. Well, first, the element, the mineral, the plant, the animal, and we are the human. So we have that availability and the capacity to see the signs and symbols that are what? They are pieces of information that we can use for our worldview and our perception. Because ultimately, that's what it's about. It's aligning your perception, your worldview, with objective laws in nature to function. So I would say they're one and the same. Yep.
Thank you for that, Will.
For
We
sure,
got one
appreciate
more
it.
right here.
All right, thank you very much for that. That was great. Just something I wrestle with myself personally. I have a question about how natural law would apply towards animal husbandry, animal stewardship, and therefore what would be the most ethical way to take an animal's life when we're living in those contexts. Thank you.
Great question. Absolutely. Yeah, when I had the definition of a right, I said sentient beings. So I'm actually absolutely talking about animals. This is there's so much division in the vegan, all these different types of realms. I myself is a vegetarian for 7 years. I do think there is a symbiosis that can be achieved. There's no handbook in life. That's what religion is there for. Oh, we got the handbook. I do understand that we can come together and understand what rights are, what true stewardship is, and we can build systems that are in more symbiosis or in symbiosis with nature itself. So we need to understand that there's a progression to the work that we need. And my work itself is just explaining, like, look, we need to understand what rights and morality is. And that absolutely applies to the animal kingdom. And getting in a more balanced position, I think that's something that we can achieve later on down the road, but also in our own individual life, for sure.
Thank you, Will. We got a few more here.
Cool.
Great presentation. I, in my own journey, wasn't able to hear these sorts of messages until I did the inner work, the shadow work. What are your thoughts in terms of any sort of prerequisite work one can do to then be able to understand truly this knowledge and embody it in their thoughts, emotions, and actions?
Great question. Absolutely. Yes, we are the 0 point. So it always starts with that internal ecology. Jerry mentioned thoughts, emotions, and actions. Unity consciousness. Thoughts, emotions is the metaphysical realm. That's the realm of consciousness and energy, which is the realm of causation, right? That's where everything comes from. Then your actions is what is the effect that goes into form. So that internal work must come first. And this is what, we're here to take in that information, sit with it, process it, digest it, right? And then apply it into your lives. So I agree 100%.
All right, here we go.
Thank you. Superb presentation. Question is, what are the next steps to apply natural law as you presented?
Very good. Very good. So remember that natural law, to generate a condition, the effect of freedom, right? It's based upon numbers. This is why we are enslaved, because the majority of minds hold certain information, which they take certain actions. That generates the conditions. So it is not only quantitative, it's qualitative. Qualitative is understanding the truth and having that information and then applying it to ourselves, but also influencing and educating others, right? So we can amplify that field of influence to create, to manifest a certain condition. It's a profound fleet that we are trying to do, but absolutely in your own personal lives, understand the relationships that you have with others, with nature itself, and focus on that, and eventually understanding that education is where we need to go. So
Awesome. Thank you, Will. We
Yeah.
got a couple more here.
First of all, great presentation. I fully agree with you on everything. The question that I have is regarding how this applies to, for example, like most people here are upstanding citizens and everything, but constantly, for example, the right to travel in a private automobile, the state will consistently come after you for speeding or parking or doing whatever, just because, you know, they're trying to serve and protect, aka they're trying to extort you for money. For a victimless crime where, you know, nobody's property has been damaged, nobody has physically been damaged or anything like that. How do you apply this to that when the state, like, for example, in the United States, the Supreme Court has upheld the right to travel in an automobile privately, but at the state level, it's just they have so many laws that they can throw at you and throw you in jail for whatever they want, basically.
yeah, great question. One thing I didn't even really mention about natural law itself, right? This is non-man-made. Definitions are important because that gives you clarity of meaning. Natural law, natural from Latin naturalis, which means inherent to creation, non-man-made. And then law is an unchanging, governing dynamic, unchanging, right? So yes, in the condition that we are in, one of slavery, and it's good to have an accurate perception. You have to have an accurate diagnosis of the problem, which is why Derek Brose's documentary series, Pyramid of Power, is so important. You need to understand the position that we are in. Because yes, do you have the right to travel? Absolutely. If a goon pulls you over, right, an order follower, and is trying to extort you, in nature, you have the right to defend yourself. Would that be wise in that time or congruent for health? Not really. You have to make that, you have to use your own discernment, right? How many people understand objective morality and natural law in the populace? Not that many. So, you know, standing up and trying to have kinetic self-defense, that right remains. But would it be wise? I think in this day and age, why we still have profound tools, microphone, computer, the internet, we're able to communicate with other people all across the world. Look at this event right here. It's fantastic. We need to utilize these tools for education of objective morality and natural law.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you again. I felt like your presentation was nourishing. You know, it was just really setting me in the right mode. I often think about at this point in our history where we are with looking at natural law and tech and how these two things have worked together, because clearly the tech is part of the evolution that we're putting on the reality. And you know, I mean, some things come up like the weirdness of maybe I'm getting on Facebook, for better or worse, and I call it like psychic Facebook. I like find someone on there, or they message me and I was just thinking of them, and it's like 10 years ago that I last talked to them. But my concern is, you know, where do we need to be getting back to the base reality? Like I went to a talk the other day, and it was very interesting. We were talking about 5G, and this person said that they had they had kind of evolved themselves to be kind of immune to it. But then I also know from scientists that I talk to that 5G is very harmful on insect life. Like they just can't handle it. So while we're doing these, adaptations with the tech, is that really reflecting the laws of nature? It's definitely influencing it. Where's the line, I guess, is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah, great question. Great question. Yeah, tools. I'm not anti-tool, right? Technoslogi, which are tools for logic. It all depends on the wielder of those tools. So the social engineers are using the knowledge of natural law and morality and how to manifest a certain condition. They're using that knowledge, that tool, as a weapon, right? We can obviously use that for good. So yes, I'm very much, AI is a great example. Could we use AI in a certain form and fashion that has integrity and ethics? Yes, I think so. And then there are certain technologies that really should not exist that are extremely harmful. And it's very reflective of the collective consciousness that humanity is in on their level of understanding of morality.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Will. I think we got time for one more.
Great.
I just want to say I think it's really important not to get too comfortable with our presumptions about some of these higher level ideas. I think we keep on having to lift the ceiling. There is always a ceiling in our thinking. And some of the elements that you have outlined to have a moral society, I have seen them applied with in one particular community I lived in for a while, an intentional community. And everyone in that community, bigger than this group here, felt that they were applying those things. But a lot of, in the end, it devolves into, I don't know just how to say this, but we are prone to making presumptions even about nature and our relationship with nature. And there's a very interesting book that really kind of, anyway, the name of it is Thinking in Destiny by Harold Percival. And anyway, I've just put that out as a,
Yeah, I can comment on that. That's a fantastic question, right? Because even when I use something like objective morality, that's why I think it's important to understand murder, always wrong. Rape, always wrong. Assault, theft, coercion, and deception, always wrong. Now, is it that cut and dry? Well, of course not. I mean, we're living in the world. This is the process of being human, where you have conflicting stories in a society where a transgression has happened, right? So yeah, we need to come to find the elements of truth. And there's all kinds of gray areas. It's not so black and white, but with those foundational cores, think about that. Think about if more people in the world understood those basics. It's not just understanding them within their own life. Well, I don't kill anyone. I don't rape anyone, right? There is government institutions. There are people that support government institutions, police and military. People, through their complicity and through their ignorance of this information, support these systems that are murdering, raping, assaulting, coercion, right? I mean, millions and millions of people die every year from democide, death by government. So the information is what is valuable. And also understand what I said earlier, that law of manifestation, karma. Karma means action. What type of action? Reaction. That's what karma is, meaning cause and effect, the energy that comes back. That is a collective, an aggregated compounding effect, right? So we need to keep that in mind. But yeah,
make some noise for Will, everybody. Make some noise for Will. Yeah, great presentation. I just wanted to mention, everybody, of course, keep checking the website for the schedule. We've also got it posted here. Our friend Victoria, raise your hand right here. She's going to be doing a workshop on natural law as well on Sunday, if you want to check that out. We got one more presentation before lunch, so I hope you guys will all stay here and give our next guest your full attention because he came all the way from Germany to be here with you guys. You might have seen him online. Yeah, where are the Germans in the room? I know we got some more. There's a few Germans in here. Okay, we got one over here, one back there. Yeah, okay, great. All right, so we're going to go rolling on into this. Again, we're talking about building parallel systems, alternative systems outside the mainstream. If you guys could give this next guest your full attention, please. Let's bring a hush over the room. Awesome. Let's give a warm welcome to Tom Oliver Rigenauer.
Thanks, Eric. Yes. Let's see with the presentation if that works. I need to get set up first. I brought too much material. So, give me a second. I don't see anything. Okay, so let's wait a second until the slides are up. I hope that we can see that in a second. I can what? I'm not quite sure how that. Comments. Not sure because let's. Ah. Okay. Yeah. Can we? Yeah, I can work like that. It's just a bit annoying that there's a bit stuff on the left side, but okay. So yeah, finally one of these weird aliens with bad English and German accent, so it feels like the actual event in Davos. So bear with me if I don't find the words or if it's not sounding as eloquent as the speakers before, but I'm really pleased to be here, and it's a great honor to speak here because I'm following Derek's work since day one. And I guess most of the Independent Media Alliance, and it's a great event with a lot of nice people, and I hope, and we had one similar event in Germany, in Switzerland, sorry, last summer, and I think these events are very productive because they bring people together that are actually doing something instead of only complaining about the world and the status quo. So give yourself a round of applause. So, and I'm speaking about something that I'm doing something that I usually don't do, speaking about myself, because when you come to my presentations, usually it's a 2-hour, I would say it's like the pyramid of power, where you basically go out and you're filled up with information and sources and stuff. But I felt for today's topic of, let me see where the slide is going. No, the slide is not moving for any reason. Yeah, okay. Good. So, yeah, that's a one-pager that I usually show at the very introduction of my presentations when I'm on tour and presenting my books. So we're not going through that line by line. I just wanted to point out the first few lines because childhood and upbringing is what brought me here. It's actually my mom should be here and talking about that because credits to her for me being here. I was born in South Germany, and I wanted to become a musician at a very early age. Started taking drum lessons around, my mom says it was 4 years old. I think it was around 5 years old. Nevertheless, I took drum lessons because I discovered a Beatles record on her shelf and listened to She Loves You, and I was infected with that music and the beat and the drive, and I thought that's exactly what I wanted to do, forget about school and become a rock star. Later on, I used that music and the skateboard culture that came to Europe in the early 90s to basically live out my intuitions, and still not very interested in school. Even though I was good there, I rarely attended it. And then I think the focal point of what I wanted to talk about is me getting into hip-hop culture in the early 90s. Because hip-hop culture at that point in time was basically do it yourself, peer-to-peer. There was no middleman. If you didn't know how to build a recording studio, or if you didn't have one, you just started creating one. And then if you didn't know how to mix a record or arrange a song, you just started doing it. It sounded shitty in the first place, but the second was better, and the third demo tape actually was something you could listen to. So it was actually living do-it-yourself, peer-to-peer economy and anarchism without even knowing what that means. Because at that time, obviously, my youth was pretty chaotic, and I think it cost my mom a decade of her life dealing with my upbringing. But nevertheless, that hip-hop culture enabled me to basically go out and do things, create demo tapes, and as the labels didn't want to publish our demo tapes because of all the anti-establishment lyrics, because that's what we did, no hook lines, no refrains, there was just verses from the very start to the end of the song for 5 minutes. That is not very successful in terms of marketing the music or going on tour or finding hook lines that people actually relate to. But we wanted to transport a message. And hence, labels didn't want to publish that music. So at the age of 18, I thought, okay, fuck that. I'm just creating my own label. And then I invented the name, I put a sticker on it, and then we just copied tapes and bought old tape machines and built racks of tapes, of tape machines, so we can reproduce them and sell copies from the trunk of the car at an early age. Then I figured out, okay, just releasing tapes doesn't do much because you only reach a certain number of people in your area. And also to get on a show, like a radio show, an independent radio show or something, you need to have a label code so they can actually play the song. And then you have to register your music with one of these publishing agencies that you also have in the US, like SCAP or something, and we have some similar in Germany, GEMA. Go full screen? Yeah, then we do that. Okay, so then I think, need to read it from there. So that kicked me off basically for being a voluntarist, anarchist, a peer-to-peer guy at a very early age, before I was even 18. And another focal point is, and that's what I wanted to talk about, books. Because once I discovered Umberto Eco's book in, I think, around 1994, it is a novel, so it's half fiction, half documentary or real information. And that book, the Foucault's Pendulum, talks about the Illuminati. And I was astonished to hear from that, and went to the local bookshop asking the lady if she knew something about the Illuminati or has a book on it, because I'm very interested in discovering more. And at that time, there was no internet and nothing, so you had to actually go to the bookstore. And then she started digging in her old computer, and after a few minutes, it spit out exactly one book that was called The Illuminati. I had to order it from the US. It arrived after a few weeks, and once it arrived, I read it like in one night. And the next morning, I woke up and thought about, do I actually need to go to school? It feels like that's not worth doing it, because that book, I think the author was called Livid, last name. I don't know the first name, but that night changed my life, because the next morning when I went to school, I thought about reality very different than the day before. It all seemed to be a Truman Show in which I'm playing a role, or I'm supposed to play a role. And I never liked roles and authority. I didn't like school. It felt like a prison or indoctrination station. They never taught the stuff that I wanted to read about. So that day changed my life, because afterwards I took all that stuff that I learned in the hip-hop culture and in the skateboard culture, and what we already did, peer-to-peer economy, do it yourself, just get rid of middlemen and stuff, and I applied that to the rest of my life. So since then, I've never voted, because I never believed in politics. That's all a show. I always started selling my stuff myself. If I didn't have a company, I founded one. Most of them not very successful. That's why I still had to work at some point. That's why you see in the later stages there's a bit of a career that I had to develop to actually make a living. But I think it's important to realize that music and culture, as we have the concerts in the evening and all the artists presenting their lyrics and their art, that's a driving force. It's not about the information only and about literature sources and books. It's about emotions and transporting and motivating people to do something else than just having the information, because the information only is of interest when it leads to action. And what we have today is a lot of people that are watching alternative news, alternative media, but they're still sitting on their couch. They're still not doing anything. They're just consuming a different type of Truman Show without being active. And that's not what this event is about. This is about actually building the future that we want to have and being active, playing an active role, changing the world around you. So the actual topic of the presentation is, next slide, please, for a second, and then one more. How do we publish stuff without having a middleman? And that applies to music, it applies to literature, it applies to magazines, to art in any way or form, and also to products, because very often we rely on retailers like Amazon or others to actually sell the products. And that is just a summary, an extract of the music that I've produced since 2004. Because I was traveling a lot, hip hop brought me to the US. I went to Lollapalooza and Rock the Bells, and I had the privilege of going backstage and meet the artists. So some of these records, as you can see online, that's just a screenshot from Bandcamp, from my account there. They are featuring, if not most or all of my golden era 90s heroes, like Keith Murray and CeeLo Green and Wu-Tang Clan, Corrupt, I don't know. I mean, a ton of artists from the US that I brought together with our band, and we did multilingual music. And I've published all of them myself, without any middleman and without any other person involved getting a share, a cut, or restricting what we can talk about, or asking us to build in a hook line that makes it more radio applicable. So next slide, please. And these are some of the books that I published since 2020, or yeah, basically these are all of the books that are published since 2020. Because when the pandemic, or whatever you want to call it, hit, I republished songs from 2008 called World War 3.0 and The Virus with Craig G from the Juice Crew. And I realized publishing music on vinyl doesn't really do much, because it reaches a certain number of people that are listening to that crazy form of hip hop with no hook lines, and it's vinyl. So a lot of people don't even have a record player at home because they are streaming music. And that's when I started writing and taking that information that I'm researching since mid-90s and putting them into a blog, into a written format, which then actually gained traction because a lot of people were searching for background information. And since I'm basically researching since 30 or so years, I had an advantage of not being surprised by 9/11. I was not surprised by the pandemic, because it kind of is something that I expected to happen. I just didn't expect it to happen in form of medical martial law, but I expected it to start at 9/11 with kind of an increasing effort on kinetic war. Then it calmed down for a little bit. We had that war on terror. And then obviously with the pandemic, we saw what that new world order would look like. It's about scanning QR codes and building a digital gulag, as Roy Moritz, for example, calls it. So I started publishing books. The first one that I wrote was just me doing it in my text editor, doing all the stuff myself, creating artwork with my with a picture that I had from a earlier record that we released. And then the second one, Elephant in the Room, was really the first book that I really did some research on, background information, where I put in a lot of sources and stuff. And that gained traction, and a lot of people were interested in long format material. It's not political commentary or anything. If you want to compare it to something that you might know, it's like reading Unlimited Hangout or James stuff. It's very long articles, 12, 13 pages, dozens of sources, hundreds of sources. So you don't have to believe me, but you can basically make up your own picture and decision and come to your own conclusions, because that's what it's about. I'm not telling anyone what to believe. But I didn't have a publishing house or anything. I just started printing books, and I started to put my name on it, which is basically just the URL of my website that that I created. And I continued doing that each year because I've published all the materials online and everything is for free. I'm not having any paywall. You can access everything for free. But I felt like if that's only on the internet, they just need to push a button and cancel my URL and everything is gone. So at the end of that first year, I decided that I have to print the stuff because that is what maybe survives the test of time. So I printed the first book in, I think I spoke to, over there, the person who translated Derek's book, opting out of the technocratic state to German. And I used that publisher for the first book. It's a publishing service. Unfortunately, they didn't want to publish my Truman Show book, where I have a long essay on the pedo class and the Clinton Foundation, with a lot of art that is in Podesta's house. And they didn't want to publish that, so I had to change and find a new publisher, or a new distributor, I would say. Next slide, please. And once that happened, that's the books that I have for this year, because now I not only publish my books, but I also published James' book in German, the reportage one. I can pass that around if you want to have a look at it. And I'm actually now publishing books from other people. The first book, it's unfortunately German, and we don't have the artwork yet, but it's about voluntarism and how you organize in a free society. So basically explaining people in a very light way, maybe 60, 70, 80 pages, what voluntarism is about. Because in Europe, it's really hard to bring that concept across because nobody really knows it. If you talk about anarchism, everybody knows that phrase, but they associate it with like chaos, violence, and all that stuff. They just don't understand who's building the roads, the famous question, yeah? And we try to explain that. And then that's my other book that's coming out this year, Dead Generation X, which is a wordplay, obviously, with the X logo, because that's a big problem we have. But let's move on to the next slide, please. And in parallel, we did start printing a magazine, which is called Gegendruck, which you can kind of translate it to counter pressure. It's a nice German wordplay. It doesn't do much in English, but it's a long format magazine that has about 200 or so pages, comes out quarterly. And we managed to get that magazine because it's being sold as a book with an ISBN number, which makes it a book with in a certain category. We managed to get that on the local bestseller list in Germany for 3 times. So that is not our goal. That's not our goal, and we could print this bestseller like button on the front cover, which looks ugly, and you have to actually pay for putting that on the button, and you advertise for their, or you promote their list. We didn't do that, but getting a book on the bestseller list or a magazine is very helpful because you reach people outside of your regular readership. They come across the newest Harry Potter book or whatever is on the trends, and they see Counter Pressure. Looks funny. What is that? And it doesn't have any Trump pictures on the front cover or EU Commission pictures or whatever. So you don't have an immediate association of what that magazine is about. And it's an interesting name with an interesting look and an interesting artwork. So we managed to reach way more people by being on that list just because they discovered the magazine and maybe ordered it by accident because they thought it's about something else. And that's and that's what I wanted to talk about, because the initial idea was I wanted to come here and tell you, go and publish more books. But as we see in a later stage of the presentation, that is not what the problem is. Can we move on to the next? Because when you publish books, and that's just a quick reminder, I think everybody knows that here. So we have books that we can go to, an archive of literature that tells about the past. And we are able to, for example, read Quickley's Tragedy and Hope to find out that left and right is just distraction management for us to believe in something that doesn't change anything. It's basically more like entertainment. We can move on to the next. And then there's another book that's even earlier. That's the 28 book from Edward Bernays called Propaganda, where you can read on page 1, chapter 1, that the true ruling power is not the stuff that Quickley was writing about. Left and right and politics It's some hidden force in the background. And that is from 1928. And if we even move on to the next slide, even earlier in 1917, we had Woodrow Wilson publishing this book, where he says that some of the biggest men in the United States in the field of commerce and manufacture are afraid of somebody, afraid of a force. They know that there is a secret power somewhere, so organized, so subtle, so watchful, so interlocked, so complete, so pervasive, that they better not speak above their breath when they speak in condemnation of it. He doesn't detail what that power is, but obviously there is something in the background that has nothing to do with politics, left and right, but more with propaganda and some hidden power that we are not aware of. And then that hidden power did something over the last 100 years that led us to the next slide, which is a visual that my wife has created. That's degeneration. That's where you had books, then you had newspapers, then you had the radio, and then television and computer games. And most people are on the very right side of that picture. And in Germany, we call them Smombies, which is a combination of smartphone and zombie in one word, a term that the youth itself in 2017 selected as their word of the year, because they can always select the trend word of the year. And it's kind of telling that the kids themselves, the teenagers themselves, chose that Smombie word as part of, as a word of their year 2017. So there seems to be some reflection, but they didn't change anything. And that is not taking into account the next thing that is hitting our brains and hitting society, which is artificial intelligence. Because the smartphone, in just about 1.5 decades, did cost us a big part of our brain capacity. It was 16 to 18 seconds or so before the implementation of the smartphone and the wide rollout, the broad rollout of that technology. Today it's between 9 and 11 seconds. So it actually makes us dumb, stupid. It kills brain capacity. And if the smartphone was able to do that in about 15 years, just imagine what AI will do in the next 15 years when people go home and ask that thing, or the search bar that you have in every search engine, what happened on 9/11? Some weird guy with box cutters. Okay, so that's the truth, and that's actually implemented everywhere where you go on the new smartphones. You can't escape it. Yeah, the new Microsoft Copilot is now basically in every application, and it's a highly invasive technology that will, I have to swear, sorry, fuck up the brain even more than the smartphone did. So what can we do against that? Next slide, please. The only thing that you can do is create physical things in the real world. Books, magazines, vinyl records, products like the one in the Agora. You have to actually create stuff. You have to come with creativity and produce things that last the test of time. If people think that creating a podcast or another like online magazine does do it, I don't think so, because we're only starting to see the rollout of what they've now implemented the last 5 years. That was a kind of a test and the implementation of the infrastructure for a digital gulag that is basically to start being activated this year in Europe. In 2026 and 2027, we'll have a wide rollout of the digital ID, which in the end will lead to not being able to access the internet because of age verification. It might be associated with your credit score, with your driver's license and everything else, your criminal records, and all that will be on a wallet on your smartphone that is forced on you. So you have to opt out and actually build the society that somehow happens outside of that system. Waiting for somebody else to do it won't help. So we have to take action and do something ourselves. Next slide, please. So that's a bit hard to read for me from there. So I have to go and quickly find the slide. There are challenges with the traditional processes of releasing music, magazines, and books. And everybody who created music or a book knows that. Because the production or the writing of a book takes time, effort, it takes resources. And if you are publishing music, for example, any major label that might help you promote the music, they won't support any real anti-establishment artist. And even if they do, it's a rip-off, because you get a small percentage of what they actually earn, and the rest goes into the structures of that company. And the board members or managers that get a lot of money. So it's not something we should be obviously working towards. And then if they tell you to become marketable and maybe change the music a bit so it's more successful and can be radio airplayed, you are selling your soul, because it's not what you created. It's not what you actually wanted to do. You fine-tune it to like meet market demands. And if you look at online publishing, for example, of music, Spotify or so changed the algorithm a few years ago, where it's not about, you know, releasing a great album, it's about releasing as much as possible. So that's why artists nowadays split up their albums in singles, because you have to basically release a single every week so that you gain any traction on the algorithm. Just putting out your album doesn't mean that anyone will find that album and listen to it. You have to put out a single like each week and have a sequence of releases that maybe gains some traction, and then you are maybe able to find a few listeners for your album. So that is absolutely contradictory to what quality is about. Everybody here remembers that when you bought an album like 20 years ago, you went home, you listened to it, you looked at the artwork, you read through the lyrics, you try to find out who that guy is or that band, and you find a magazine somewhere. And it had some holistic approach to it. Nowadays, everything is split up in small puzzle pieces, and you are actually forced to comply with the algorithm to make any difference or to reach anyone. And the same applies to magazines or books, because nowadays books and magazines are mainly handled by Amazon, as we will see on the next slide. And the only actual way to create income as a musician or an artist is to go on tour. But if your music doesn't have any listeners, it will be hard for you to find a venue that books you for a tour or where you can actually organize an event. And if you do, the room is half empty, you pay for the event or for the venue, and you might end up losing money. And then on top of it, especially in Europe, where censorship is crazy, if you publish music that goes against the narratives, you don't even get a venue because they are afraid of booking you. Because if they book you, you might have some Antifa or somebody else in front of the building protesting, and the local newspaper is writing something bad about that venue so that they can't do their normal events the next week. So it's really tough to reach anyone. And the same applies to magazines, where you have different distribution channels. The regular distribution channel for a magazine is, you find that on an airport or in a retail store, 7-Eleven or whatever. But those magazines that are there, they get printed in advance. So somebody owns the stock, ships them, and puts them on these shelves in the stores. The problem is that everything that's not sold in these stores, around 50%, 40, 60, depending on the title or the magazine, just ends up in garbage, because shipping it back is too expensive. So they actually just throw it away. So that's not sustainable, and obviously a very expensive undertaking. That's why for our magazine here, we went the print-on-demand approach, where you basically order it, obviously online, and you get that one copy shipped to your house. So you can't find it in an airport or in a bookstore. You have to go to the website as a marketing channel or to buy it. Yeah? And for books, a lot of people that I know that write great books, they still go to a publishing house, to not a mainstream, but maybe an independent, established independent publishing house, because they expect them to help promote the book. But these independent publishing houses don't have budgets because they don't make a lot of money. So there is no promotion for that book. They might have a newsletter and some contacts where they can maybe do some advertisements by sending out email chains or something, but they won't book an advertisement in a newspaper. There is no TV ads or anything that will make people aware of your book. So going to a publishing house in Europe mostly ends up with you getting a 5K advance, and then you don't hear from them for the next 2 years until you have your next book ready. While as if I publish a book on my own publishing house and print on demand, I make way more money because there's no middleman. I can actually finance my next book project and even have it translated. So now you can go to the Internet Archive and download my Truman Show and my Homo Demens book for free, because I had the money from the income from the other books to have somebody translate it and put it online for free. So that leads to, next slide, solutions, because that's what it's about. Solutions for music, and I have to read that here again. If you publish music yourself, time and effort, resources pretty much remain the same, but in the end you will own 100%. That is the most important thing. If you register yourself with ASCAP, GEMA, or these agencies for royalties and potential radio airplay, you will get the payout, not the label or anyone else. If you get a label code, which I had to find out, and ISRCs, International Standard Recording Codes, for your songs, they are able to be monetarized online. A lot of people just put that out instead of registering them. And if you go through portals like RecordJet, iGroove, Bandcamp, and so on, you can actually set up distribution in the proper way so that your product reaches people and they can access it. But even more important for me is that that you don't only publish it online, but that you find a pressing plant or a manufacturer somewhere in your area, in your state, in your region, your town, that presses, that produces actual physical media, because that's what you need when you go on tour. And that's the most important thing of it. You have to go out. A lot of people that write books or create music, they feel, I'm an artist, I'm at home, I'm doing in my studio, I'm at my desk, I'm creating something that has value. And it has. But that doesn't do much if nobody finds that value and if you are not able to go out and promote it. Obviously, not everyone wants to be on a stage. Not everybody wants to go out and travel for a month or so, sleeping in cheap hotels or having the stress of driving 4 hours a day to arrive at the next venue the next day in the afternoon and show up on stage at 5 for sound checks and whatnot. So it's a hassle, it's an effort. But if you do that twice or so a year, there's an actual chance of you getting to know your audience or creating audience, and also for you to sell your physical products that you bring with you, like the folks in the Agora are doing, where you see the boxes with books and shirts. You have to invest first, pack your car and go out, because otherwise nobody will find you, and the internet rather prevents people from finding you if you are not on their side. And also for magazines, for example, you have to create a kind of standout concept like this one with the number. Instead of putting a clickbaitish type of picture on there that shows a politician or the world's gonna end tomorrow, where you think that maybe attracts people, it's much better to have a very distinct look that differentiates your product from everything else. And I can pass that around in a minute. If you look at the text inside, it looks very different as well. There's no other magazine in the German-speaking region of Europe that looks somehow similar like that. It's a very unique product, and we got very good feedback because it's an investment of creativity that turns out in a physical product and not online. So the distinctive look and a very specific concept that doesn't have to be like clickbait and the world's gonna end tomorrow type of thing, helps to make people aware of what you do. But magazines are difficult in comparison to books because you need editorial staff, you need somebody to proofread it, and all that costs money. So you have to pay people and find maybe models that you can develop with authors or the editors, where they start working for maybe low costs in the beginning, but maybe you get to a deal where with increased sales or increased numbers of copy, they profit from the increased number of copies. So you have to be smart in developing a way of engaging people, hiring people that maybe get low pay, a low wage in the beginning, but then increases with their effort that they put in to help you sell the product and get the product out. Because if you have 20 authors contributing to a magazine and only the editor or the marketing guy is somehow doing marketing, that's not very efficient. You need all these folks that contribute to the magazine to actively help promote it in their circle of trust or in their region, in their town, wherever they are. So in comparison, a book is much easier and the, I would say, easiest way to create a physical product because you own everything. If you count on quality and don't rush to just complete the book in some way or form, if you do the research and if you put sources in, if you take advice, but don't fall trend to victims and critics, you are able to come up with something unique, just like the magazine. My books, for example, are all white and have just a simple picture on the front. Looks very different in any online shop than all the other books that are released. The guy who was doing the layout inside now didn't like it in the first place, but nowadays it, after a few years, differentiates my books from all the other books, so people find the book. And then also, I didn't give my books names like Technocracy is Coming or something like that. I gave it a name like Truman Show or Homo Demens, which is kind of always, it's kind of a wordplay, but that leaves open what that book is about. And then the backside, there's a small text on the backside of the book that I usually try to make in some way clear about what it is, but it's a very short, high-level description of what's inside, but still not written in a way or form that a left-leaning or right-leaning guy would say, oh, I'm not going to read that. It's from one of these lefties or from of these conservatives. So I'm leaving it open as a product instead of explicitly naming what's in the book. And that helped to reach a lot of people that most likely wouldn't have read my book before, because they thought I was during COVID, I was a right-wing activist. And now, since I'm speaking out for Gaza, I'm a radical left terrorist. Yeah? So the same people, yeah? Which is funny. But since that changes, I haven't. And I just continued publishing that way. And it created a brand. It created a look, a distinctive look, and in the end, the quality of the essays or the work that is put inside the book paid off, because people now recommend my books to others because there's no one else writing such articles in our area, or nearly no one else, because it's not long format, and most of that stuff is still talking about politics and the dialectics that the ruling class uses. If we move on to the next slide. And that is, we can skip that, but this is underlining that in order to get to the people that have to read my books, that is, I think, maybe 50% of the tour I'm going to do this year. So small villages, small audiences with 30, 40 people, bigger ones in Berlin or Hamburg where you have maybe 200 or some people. But I'm actually taking my book and I'm bringing it to the people in May and in September, like traveling. It's a huge effort. It's exhausting, but that's the only way that's going to do it. Next slide. And as I said before, books are pretty much the easiest way to, I would say, make a living of writing instead of a magazine where there are more people involved, where you have to maybe find distribution channels, where the margin of such a magazine, we sell that for like 20 euros quarterly. It's around $20 or something, $18. But we have to pay 2 editors, somebody who proofreads it, then the guy who's doing the layout. So there is a handful of people that has to at least get a small incentive every 3 months for creating that product. So nobody can make a living of a magazine if you are not selling above 5, 8, 10,000 copies. And for us, the market usually, a normal book that you release like in an independent publishing house, that's most likely selling around 2,000 copies, 2,500, that's the average number. But as an author writing books, selling 2,500 books, you can kind of make a living if you do 2 books a year. With a magazine that you release or that you publish every month, and you are selling maybe 3,000 or 2,500 copies, nobody of the people involved will be able to make a living of that. So I'm still advertising for writing books because you are in control of everything, quality, product, timelines, communication, launch, distribution, admin, financials. And for a live event like the ones I showed before, there's nothing you need as far as infrastructure. You don't have to show up with a band, do sound checks, have 3 instruments set up and the drum set. It's just you showing up with a laptop, maybe a microphone depending on the venue, and your books. That's it. It's pretty simple to organize. And then a lot of people are still aiming to create a bestseller, which doesn't make sense. You have to create a long seller, which is way more valuable. If you sell in a one-off, like 5,000 books, and you make, I don't know, 20 grand or something, those 20 grand are gone at some point, and you think you have a lot of budget, and also you have the perception that maybe over the next few months there will be more sales. Usually that doesn't happen. There is a peak where you sell a few books, and after that it slows down and it goes to 5, 10, 0 at some point. If you create a long seller that people are interested in because they hear from others, that's a nice book, you maybe sell 200, 300, 400 a month, which is not that big of an income, but it's consistent. And if you have 5 books out that are long sellers, you have a salary you can live from monthly. So it's more about quality and creating something that lasts the test of time instead of talking about Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, Trump, Greenland, and all that stuff, because that's short-lived information and it's not relevant if you do something that lasts the test of time as a physical product, but also in form of the content, and you create a long seller and you have a few of those out, like a good song that pays each and every month because a few thousand people download that from your Bandcamp account, or a few hundred. That makes a few $100 each month. So that's what it's about in order to make a living. And depending on the audience, publishing a book also requires to come up with additional information, material, and articles to actually promote the book. A lot of people tend to then use material within the book to promote it. I do think it's much more valuable to create specific articles and have them ready for the book launch, so you can, before you launch the book, go to magazines and offer an excerpt or a specific article that you wrote about a specific topic, but that's not in the book. So you don't give away what's in the book. That's important. As far as music, the same. If you like put out a single each month, where's the motivation to buy that album? Because everybody downloaded a single here and there, they miss 50% of the songs, but nobody buys that album because they heard the 3 songs that they like, they save them on the smartphone or in their playlist, and that's about it. Nobody is going to value the effort that you put in to create a holistic piece of art, an album with 12 or 15 songs. And then it's about planning. That's what Will just said before. There needs to be some organization. You have to be on top of your schedule, timetable. You have to do pre-order arrangements that maybe enable you to bring that book to the bestseller list, so that other people that are not in your readership or viewership learn about the publication and actually find the work. And then you have to also, I think still we have social engineering platforms like Twitter and Facebook and stuff that you can leverage to some extent. But in the end, it's really about building direct relations with your readers. And that's the website. So you have your own URL where you have to bring people to your URL. And then you have simple tools like newsletters where they can register for email newsletters, or an RSS feed, which I'm also advertising for, because that is a direct contact you establish with the people that are reading your stuff, that are interested in your work. If you do that via a social media platform, they just have to cancel your profile and you're gone, and the contact is lost. So getting the email addresses of people is a valuable thing. That's your capital that you can use to be in direct contact with them. And then if you have somebody who's, for example, here, it's a bilingual event where there's people speaking Spanish and English with translation right away. If you have people and you live in an area where there is, in Germany, for example, next to it is France, we have Spain. So you could find friends or others that maybe speak the language and have time to translate the book for either for free if they are inclined to do that, or for a maybe low investment, but it enables people outside of your area to read the book. In the US, that might not be much of a deal, because, or not so much of a deal, because you have a huge market of 200 or so million people. But if you are living in a small country, like I think we came across Poland or Switzerland, is very small, you have to do something to enable others to find the work outside of your language and region. So translations are an important part. For example, Derek's book, I think that was translated into German and published before. I asked, didn't sell too much. Yeah? So that book is a book that everybody should have read, that is interested in opting out and creating parallel economies or stuff. But if you are not able to promote the book live and go out and find people, it's not doing anything. So translations and then live events are really important. And then even more important for me, I think, to come up with a good product is understanding and owning the entire supply chain, as you call it. You can write a book and then just hand it off to someone doing the artwork. And then you can give it to someone doing proofreading, and after a few weeks, they get their book back, but it has corrections, it has edits, it has an artwork that you might like or not, that you would have done differently. So you need to understand the entire process. Like in hip hop, you create something with machines that you understand, that you maybe destroyed when you try to use them first and change them or tune them. But in the end, it ends up at the point where you're actually in control of the technology, of the publishing. You have somebody doing graffiti that doing the artwork, or some photographer who can take a few pictures, whatever. But owning the entire process and understanding your product from start to end is also a very important factor of success for whatever you publish. Next slide, please. And one example how that works is the publication of James' book, because we had an interview last year, and afterwards we just needed a few weeks and a few conversations to agree that I would be doing the German translation of that book. And after that agreement, we did sign a paper, basically agreed on the conditions, and based on my work on my own books and the Gegendruck magazine, I had contacts to somebody who is peer-to-peer, just translating the book. There's no invoice. Yeah, you send Monero or whatever, or cash or anything, but there is no invoice, there's no process, nothing is documented. So I had someone translating the book, I had someone doing the artwork, so it's in blue, not in red, so it differentiates online from the English version. And due to a realistic planning, I was able to organize the publication in a way and form that we did have the chance with pre-orders stack up. Yeah, once you have a pre-order online and it lasts for 6 to 8 weeks, those pre-orders stack up, and you sell a certain amount of copies at that time when the date hits, the release date, then you are able to get on that bestseller list. We didn't manage to do that because in the week that James' book was released, there was a ton of other books like on, I don't know, pasta and movies. So people bought 10,000 of copies of those books with pastas and movies, and only a few thousand books from James' book. But we still sold more books of reportage than the average independent publisher would sell of a title they release, which is great because it's just me and a few friends doing it with no middleman, no publishing house. I'm not even sure if I own a publishing house. I just printed a label on it and I started selling books. And I found somebody who's printing the books. So I don't care how that structure is called, or if the state or somebody thinks there's a code missing. As long as I have an ISBN on the back and they can scan it in the bookstore, and as long as you can order it and I can send James his share, and we sell hundreds or thousands of books, the process works. Who cares? That's all I wanted. I wanted to make sure that people have the chance of reading that amazing book. So it's a prime example of how you can do things in a voluntarist society without anyone else getting involved than the author, a few friends, and myself doing the coordination. So I'm going to do that next year with other people's work, and yeah, maybe other books that I will have translated. For example, Ian Davis' new book or so that I think is worth reading in German as well. I have to ask him if he's willing to do that. We can move to the next slide, please. And then if you look at the market, as I said before, I wanted to encourage people to, hey, go out and publish more books. I'm not going to do that because if you look at the actual numbers, there are 300, that's US numbers, 300 million self-published books are sold every year. 1 in 3 ebooks in the United States are self-published. So there isn't a lack of self-publishing. There is a lack of noticing. But the good news is that since the scamdemic, pandemic hit, the number of books sold increased. It decreased a bit over the last 2 or 3 years, but nevertheless, there's more interest in books than it was before, which is good. And the interesting part is adult nonfiction. That's the categories there in this diagram. Adult nonfiction is the best-selling category. So that's books like James' book or my books. It's not fiction, it's not novels, it's actual information in printed form. So people are interested in buying these books if they knew they were there. Next slide, please. If you look at the numbers, though, monopolies and lies, monopolize and manipulation. Amazon, of course, owns the majority of the book market nowadays. If you see the numbers there, I hope that's kind of visible on the slide there. From 2007 onwards, they had a number of 66,000 or so self-published books. Now in 2018, it was 1.5 million. Yeah? So there is a huge amount of self-published books, and the share of self-published books by Amazon is 91%, which is crazy. And if you look at the right box there on the bottom, that's an interesting take there, is because it's hard to compete in that market, that over 90% of the self-published books sell under 100 copies during their lifetime. And the average self-published books author will earn under $1,000 from book sales during that year or during a year. And the average self-published title will sell around 250 copies during its lifetime. So if you invested 1 year or 2 or even more into writing a book, and then you maybe sell 100 copies, that's highly frustrating. And I bet you wouldn't want to write a second book. You want to have that recognition, obviously, just for yourself, for the work. But if you actually try to also build a life on your creative work, on your investigation, on the research, on your writing, you have to find a way of making money with it. And again, as long as there's a middleman involved, the share that you get is rather minimal. Let's move to the next slide, please. So my actual point of the presentation is that we don't need more books to be sold. What we need is to understand that decentralization also means localization. We're building local communities. We are looking for permaculture, for food, for electricity, even for technology to some extent. But what we are losing is local news. If you look at the article that I think the top was CNBC, in the US, newspapers continue to die at a rate of 2 each week. So in 2005, there were like 8,891 newspapers. But in the early 20th century, we had around 24,000 newspapers. And on the right side, there's this report, the State of Local News Project, that's from October 2025, where it says that around 50 million Americans live with limited or no access to local news. So if I want to know what happened in my town 50 years ago in southern Germany, a small town with like 20,000 inhabitants, I can go to the archive, to the library, and I find the book that some man, some woman wrote in that time frame, maybe 100 years ago, 150, 200. I find books that tell me about the history of my area, where I come from, where I have an influence, where my understanding of the world, where my parents come from. If you look towards the future and you consider that we don't have local news, that we are not writing about local events, local structures, that ability is gonna vanish. If your kids or grandkids try to find out what happened in the city or the town you live in 50 or 70 or 100 years, they most likely will find nothing. There is nothing. There's no printed materials. If they are lucky, there's a URL that someone created at that time that you find through the Wayback Machine, and that tells you a bit of stuff around your area. But if you don't have a local newspapers archive or books that talk about the actual region you live in, we have a history gap going forward. And as Orwell said, who controls the history controls the present and the future. So we need to get our arms around documenting now the present to allow the future to reconstruct and understand where all that comes from, what they face. And that's why I'm encouraging people. Obviously, it's more interesting and it's maybe more attractive having a book with Donald Trump on the title or the technocratic whatever. Yeah, that's important. Yeah, but way more important, in my opinion, is that we are also understanding that, for example, as a German, I'm not really impacted what Trump is doing, besides tariffs, maybe if I want to order something from the US. But in general, it's not interesting for me. I can maybe read something about local politicians or something that has some relevance, but still, doesn't really impact my life directly. What impacts me directly is if they close the supermarket around the corner, if they build a 5G tower somewhere near my house, or if they get rid of that small school because they want to centralize schooling and now the kids have to get on a bus and drive to the next bigger city. That's something that I really care about, because that's really impacting the people around me, the future generations, and the town I'm living in. If they close the public library, we don't have access to books for free. So people have to get on a bus, get to the drive half an hour, and maybe get a book from the next bigger town. But who's doing that? So that is really important. Localization is decentralization. So instead of writing about stuff that happens in the whatever far east, or in the US for Europeans, or in Europe for you guys here, write about that stuff that happens around you. Document the area, document your town, document the life of the people around you. In the future, that is going to be way more relevant than knowing what Candace Owens said yesterday or what Donald Trump ate the day before. So we need to document our surroundings. Next slide, please. We have to move a bit faster because I'm... is the slide there? Let's skip 2 or 3. Move on, please. I want to talk about time management, but I'm not doing that. One more. Okay, now go back. Key takeaways. So let me summarize quickly. What I think is important. First, just do what you want. Don't let other people tell you what's more marketable or what is relevant. The only relevance, the only judge for deciding what is relevant is you. Focus on topic of actual relevance, maybe stuff around you, and not distraction management or what's on the news today. And then information is only relevant when it leads to action. You have to actually gain control of all processes required to create your product, whether it's music, whether it's literature, art, or whatever. And then I have a lot of people that are really creative, but without organizational skills and discipline, you get nowhere. You have great ideas, fantastic, but if you are not able to put them on a timeline and the roadmap so that you can actually execute and deliver, like this event, like a book or a movie, it's doing nothing. You have to be and present the product. Even if you don't like to leave your desk or your recording studio, you have to, because otherwise people won't find what you created. And that's sad, because you invested a lot of time, love, energy, and if nobody takes notice, that's really bad. And then, yes, AI might make you more efficient, but not better, because the stuff that is created with artificial intelligence mostly just lacks soul. It's not real. So do it analog, do it yourself, even if it takes a bit longer. Physical media will stand the test of time. As I said before, my website is going to vanish at some point, latest when I'm dead. And decentralization means localization. The really relevant stuff happens directly around you and not somewhere in other countries. So start writing and documenting your own life with the people around you, what happens in your town, with the companies around you, with the newspapers around you, and the public infrastructure. Decentralizing is localizing. And then last slide, that's what this event is about. Don't surrender, organize. That being said, I think there's even more. One more. Yeah, thank you very much for the attention. And if you want to come to the workshop, that's in 15 minutes over there in the activation room, I think.
Yes, give Tom another round of applause, everybody, all the way here from Germany. Thank you guys for being here for the morning session. We'll be back at 2 p.m. Thank you guys at home. We'll see you at 2. See you later.
Our power is in our voice. Our power, it's in our thoughts. Our power is in our actions. Our power, it's already innate in who we are. We are the earth. We are the sky. We are the trees. We are our ancestors. We are the future generations. We are all that is.